soul to soul, soul to soul. Soul to soul, 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 soul to soul.
Hello and welcome to the show Soul to Soul Talk Show. This is Pooja, and today we have with us again brother David from London, who's been practicing Raj Yoga meditation for the last 36 years. Last time we talked about his childhood, how he used to have spiritual experiences which he enjoyed but he couldn't interpret. And then we talked about his interests, that he had a lot of interest in sports, different kinds of sports, and how he encountered stress during his college years. Welcome, Brother David.
Thank you.
To begin with, Brother David, were you an introvert kind of person?
So how do you define?
I mean to say, in general, what kind of personality you had? Were you extrovert or introvert? Were you able to express your feelings or hide your feelings?
Actually, I was both. I was a quiet child, but I was also quite expressive, particularly when I was playing out and in sport. You know, one thing that, because I worked with children for many years as a children's dentist, and one thing that I see isn't there in children's education, certainly wasn't talked about when I was young, is about actually expressing our emotions. So that wasn't something that we'd have conversations about. So I'm not sure that I knew how to express my emotions, except probably get a bit irritated if I didn't like something, or a little bit mopey, a little bit quiet if things weren't going.
Depends on the situation. Depends upon the situation?
Depends on the situation, yeah. But I think I was quite reflective as a child. I think I was reflective, but I think I had this balance, because introversion, I don't know, sometimes you think of introversion where you're not speaking and you don't have friends. Actually, I had dozens of friends. My whole life I've always been surrounded by people, and especially when I was a child, and now I'm part of the Brahma Kumaris. I mean, people think meditation makes you a little bit insular and cut off, but actually, you know, I've got friends in over 100 countries now, so I'm very expressive. I enjoy being with people. I'm interested in people, but I also like some downtime. I like to reflect a little bit. So I guess that is a little bit of introversion, yeah.
Brother, were you a very emotional kind of person?
Yes, I think I was. I think I was quite passionate about things. And when I was a child, it would get me into trouble a little bit. I think I mentioned before that I used to defend things which I felt were unjust. And when I was younger, I used to get into quite a few scraps about things like that. I don't think I was a violent kid, but I would feel quite strongly about things, yeah.
And you said you started encountering stress during your college years. How did you deal with that?
You know, like I was mentioning initially, I didn't really have any tools, so I didn't have any mental skills to be able to deal with it, and so my distress, I was trying to learn to relax, so I started doing exercises and hatha yoga, and one of my loves when I was younger was nature. I mean, here we're surrounded by beautiful nature and the birds, and so that was very helpful. And I got interested in gardening, funnily enough. When I was studying, I used to plant a lot of things, grow things from seeds, and you know, it's a bit like occupational therapy. You get occupied by something and it takes your mind off it. The only thing was that when you stopped doing that, because the worry was coming from something inside, the way that I was thinking, it was very temporary. And that's when I started looking at other types of relaxation, and I think before I came across the Brahma Kumaris Raj Yoga meditation, I was just then reading spiritual books, looking for some meaning in life, and also because I felt that stress was something that was there when you're in relationship to situations and people. So I felt that was, I needed to understand myself better when I was with people, I guess.
Were you not satisfied with the different types of things you tried to solve this?
I tried many things and they were kind of useful, but they weren't complete. Like, for instance, many types of meditations are based on techniques, so breathing, posture, things like that, repeating a mantra. And I kind of did all those, but it's like the kind of study that I was doing, dentistry, you had to use your mind a lot. When you were with the patients, you had to speak a lot. You were very active. So I couldn't sit cross-legged in the middle of a surgery. I couldn't close my eyes. And so those things, I would say they were useful but incomplete.
Could we say they were not permanent?
They had a temporary impact. They had a temporary effect. But I think I realized that I needed something that I could use when I was doing things, when I was in action. And certainly when I qualified, my whole day was think, speak, do, because I was working with young kids. I mean, so with young kids, you've got to be right in there with them. You can't kind of sort of be a little bit detached, because you've got to be right in there. And for young children, they're scared of coming to the dentist. They don't know what's happening. So you were asking about being introverted, but my whole of my working day was speaking. And I guess for me, talking was kind of a tool to kind of connect to the children, maybe build a relationship so they could trust me, so I could actually get my work done.
So did you enjoy your job?
Yeah, I loved my job. I love my job, but I qualified and then I got married, and so when I was first working, I started work. I loved it, but I was so stressed. I was coming home after a day's work and shouting at the wife, and actually got to the point that I didn't really want to go into work. And it wasn't because I didn't like the work. I loved the work, I loved the kids. But like I was mentioning, I didn't have the tools or the skills to deal with my own stress. And, I was 24, 25, newly qualified, professional couple. Outside, we had everything, a nice house and good job. But I thought I have to do something about this, because...
What was the exact reason for the stress?
If you'd given me a football or a cricket bat or a golf club, I'd be quite confident. But and I could do the physical work as a dentist, but actually I realized very soon that most of the work about a dentist, apart from the technical skills, which you learn, is about connecting with people and relationships and how you feel about yourself and your own level of confidence. And I realized that there was just a big vacuum there. I didn't have those skills, and they weren't talked about at school or college.
You found it difficult to relate to people?
I didn't find it difficult to relate to people, but in that context, I wasn't confident of my own ability to get everything done. And because I was quite young, and quite often the people that I would be treating would be quite older, a bit wiser, more experienced, I think it probably was a confidence thing, not just in the skills, because naturally when you qualify in any profession, you have to learn. You don't become an experienced dentist or an experienced doctor or an experienced anything overnight. You have to learn. But I wasn't sure of myself emotionally, if I'm being honest. Yeah.
So how long you continued with that?
What, feeling stressed?
Feeling in that profession also?
How long I was working as a dentist? Oh gosh, I worked 27, 28 years. But luckily, I did become interested in meditation. And about 18 months after starting my career as a dentist, then I connected with the Brahma Kumaris, and that meditation was more useful to me. It was more useful to me, basically because the ideas were more complete, and because it's an eyes open meditation, it's not so much a technique, but an awareness that you cultivate in meditation, but then you can carry it with you into your work. And that was really helpful.
That was what you were looking for.
Yeah, it was very useful. And also, you know, as I was mentioning before, I was a sports person, so I was very active. So the idea of just sitting around meditating with your eyes closed didn't really appeal to me. I think the peace that I was looking for probably was more something like a stability of mind, because quite often people connect peace with being lethargic or passivity, not doing anything. But I was seeing it more that I could do things, but with mental stability, so my mind wasn't racing. And a meditation that I learned through the Brahma Kumaris, which was based on an attitude or an awareness, that means I could carry that into my day's work, and it worked. It worked very quickly. So,
brother, how long it took to get rid of that stress after learning the meditation?
you know, you always have some stress, because actually you need something to motivate you. But it was fairly quickly. But of course, there's old patterns. So that old patterns of becoming stressed or anxious, it does come back. But what I learned was that a lot of the time we're creating our own stress by how we think, because, you know, you get 2 or 3 guys in the same situation. For one person, that situation is a breeze, easy peasy. Other person, they're reasonably relaxed, but having a little bit of stress. And the third person in the same situation is feeling really stressed, and they say, this is really stressful for me. And what I started to realize was actually the stress is not so much in the situation, but how I'm responding or reacting to the situation.
Is it about changing the attitude?
It's about changing the attitude. And, you know, what is an attitude? It's kind of, an attitude is like a mental positioning towards something, isn't it? It's like, you know, attitude of mind. If someone has an attitude at work, like for instance, I used to have one nurse, and she was that used to work with me occasionally, and she was lovely, but, you know, she preferred to breed horses and go riding, and so she didn't really want to be at work on a Monday morning. And on Monday morning she'd come in and say, "Oh, I hate Monday mornings." So it's a kind of an attitude. So you can imagine you bring your kids in to the surgery, and you're being greeted by someone who doesn't really want to be there. And I really realized that actually, you know, an attitude of mind we're creating ourselves, and it's based on our thoughts, but it's not just a single thought. An attitude is a thought pattern, so it's repetitive thought.
So this is what you learned from Brahma Kumaris?
Yeah, I learned that through the Brahma Kumaris, that identity of the self as being something more than just physical. And intuitively I knew that. I mean, 2 things. When I was a kid, I can remember when my grandmother died, and at the funeral, and I remember people were crying and talking about her, and I remember as a very young child just looking at the coffin, and you know, as a child's man, and I wasn't being disrespectful, but I remember thinking, why are they talking about her? She's already gone. I said, this is just the box, this is just the shell. And of course, when I started studying dentistry, then, you know, as part of your training, you'd have to do a section on anatomy, and so you have to learn anatomy. You cut up a dead body that's been given to science, and again, I remember in the anatomy room, and I wasn't being disrespectful, but I remember thinking, but these aren't people here; they're just pickled bodies. And I remember thinking that there's something in a human being that isn't in these bodies. But again, I didn't know that. And of course then, reading many spiritual books and hearing this idea about the soul and the body being separate. And then when I came to the Brahma Kumaris, that then became clear that yes, the soul or the spirit, the consciousness, the life force, is very clearly there when we're living, and when someone dies, we even use that expression, don't we? So and so has passed on, or the light has departed. So that became very clear to me when I started meditating.
Then how long it took to get yourself convinced about the teachings of Brahma Kumaris?
It works on two levels. One is a kind of a mental, a kind of an intellectual level, and naturally you can't accept everything, because how do I know what you're being told is true? I read books and books and books, but actually how do you know what is true, even if they say it is? I can only know by something which resonates inside me. Funny enough, last week we were doing a workshop on conscience, being your own personal coach, and the group came up with a beautiful definition of conscience, which was an inner compass that guides me towards my own personal truth. And so, you see something that you like or dislike, that you feel is right or wrong. If you ask, how do you know that? You just know. There's something inside which knows. And so I found when I connected to the Brahma Kumaris, it wasn't an intellectual thing, but I felt, yes, there's some truth here. And also I liked the people. They seemed genuine, and it was free. So that said, there was a lot of integrity, but something inside was resonating. And then, yes, it took time to understand the concepts and the ideas, but one of the things that I really liked about Brahma Kumaris was that their main emphasis was changing concept into my own personal experience, and then applying that in my daily life. Probably we'd call it applied spirituality. Like, you get chemistry and then there's applied chemistry, or you get engineering and it's applied engineering. In other words, there's an intellectual concept about something, but what does it look like in your ordinary life? And there was a lot of emphasis on that, and I really like that.
Brother, was marriage of any help in reducing your stress?
Well, yes and no. Because sometimes people think your wife is your stress, and the wife thinks husband is your stress. No, on a practical level, my wife and I, we were childhood sweethearts, actually. We'd been going out quite some time. So, of course, you've got someone to talk things through. So in that sense, yes, she is very helpful. But then, like I was saying, you're kind of creating stress with your thinking, and so someone can't get inside your head. So there's a kind of a limit to how someone can actually help you de-stress.
Brother, how you got introduced to the Brahma Kumaris organization?
Yeah, both my wife and I independently were searching and reading a lot of spiritual stuff, and we'd got involved with various spiritual practices, and actually we bumped into the Brahma Kumaris in Edinburgh, which is in Scotland. You probably know there's an international arts and film festival every year, so we were in Scotland, and the Brahma Kumaris had come and had an exhibition and a talk there. So that's how we connected with them.
Okay. Why were you looking for such spiritual things? Was there any reason for that?
We were both interested. And I think I was mentioning that I felt there has to be some spiritual purpose, some spiritual direction to life to get that inner fulfillment. So I always felt that I probably wanted to know a little bit more about why I was here and the meaning of my life. So I guess I was interested in that.
Brother, you were settled in every way, you were settled in your life. Then why were you looking for something more? Yeah,
it's interesting. I heard a talk the other day, which was, it was something like full life, empty heart. So, it's tried, a young professional couple, we had everything. The world was our oyster, but I also felt there was something more needed. Even actually when I qualified as a dentist, you go nervously towards the notice board to see if your name was there. And I remember thinking, oh, I've passed, I'm now a doctor. And I didn't feel any different. And so that gave me a kind of an inkling to kind of realize that for me, it was important to know myself inside. And actually, I think that was already there. Like some of my friends, they just wanted to earn a lot of money, get their first big house, their first big car. And for me, that didn't seem important. So I guess there was something inside, like this knowingness that real happiness in life, or real contentment, or real fulfillment, it's whatever you want to call it, isn't just about externals. It's also to do with how you're feeling and how you're feeling inside.
Brother, were you not a materialistic kind of person?
You know what I saw and felt. Of course, you need money, and it's nice to be liked, etc. But it's temporary, and you know, today you have wealth, tomorrow you don't. Today your health's okay, tomorrow it's not. Today you're married, tomorrow you're divorced. You know, so all these kind of things which give happiness, it's fine, but is my life going to be dependent just on the externals? Like, I don't know, like over here, but in England, when they're selling a property, you know, when they're selling a house, before it's absolutely signed off, it is called sold subject to contract. In other words, it's sold, but you still haven't signed the contract. And I could see that, in a sense, people were living their life a little bit like that. You know, so they'd go on holiday, and if the hotel was okay, they'd be happy, they'd be peaceful. If the weather was okay, they'd be happy, they'd be peaceful. If the guys in the next room weren't making too much noise, they'd be happy and peaceful. But what I realized is that maybe there's a way of just being happy or being peaceful, so that it wasn't dependent on external things.
But at such a young age, it's hard to find people with such thinking.
But this is why I was saying that it must have been something. It must have been something inside, and I really believe it's inside all of us. But maybe it just surfaces at different times.
Brother, when you felt stress in your life, didn't you try to be social or go, like going to discos or pubs?
A little bit, but you know, it's a funny thing. I tried to smoke when I was a young kid. You know, you get shown how to smoke, but I couldn't inhale the smoke. So my young friend said, "Oh, there's no point smoking, waste of money." So I never got into that habit. And actually, if you look at the physiologically of smoking, it relaxes you short term, but long term it doesn't. And I tried to drink, but I wasn't a big drinker. And I couldn't really drink. And also, it was a kind of a funny thing, even from a young age. I didn't like the feeling of being out of control, because, you know, before they had modern anesthetics, they used to anesthetize people with alcohol. So the idea of getting clarity of mind in terms of drinking, it didn't kind of work for me. And even if I had a little, I'd probably be drunk very quickly. But then I didn't feel good afterwards, because I felt I had to do it in a different way. My friends, gambling for instance, once my friends took me away for a weekend, I didn't know how to play cards. So they taught me how to play cards, took all my money from me, and then felt a bit guilty and gave me all money back. But it was something that I never really got into. I thought, this is just a distraction. It's not really solving something. So it just seemed temporary. And also I looked at some of my friends and people who were doing that, and I felt there was something missing in their life, and their life was out of control. They didn't seem any more happier than I was, and so.
Brother, was it your personal opinion, or were you influenced by some other person also regarding your belief systems?
No, it was. I think it was. This is what I was mentioning before. There was something inside that seemed to. Yeah, it just kind of kept me on track. I mentioned before, I was exposed to booze, I was exposed to this, I was exposed to drugs, and exposed to guys who were doing, you know, pretty illegal things. But for some reason, I never got drawn into that, and it didn't feel right for me. But it wasn't a kind of. I didn't intellectually think about it. I just didn't go there. It was a kind of an intuitive thing. And I'm thankful for that, actually. It kind of kept me safe.
Brother, did sports ever become a distraction for you of any kind?
You know, for me, when I was a kid, sport and activity was pretty much my life, so I wouldn't have separated the two. And also, you know, I found when I did sport, and it does distract you. It gets you out of yourself. It changes your environment. So in that sense, it does help stress, and also physiologically, you know, when you do sport, it releases the happy hormones, you know, the endorphins that everyone's talking about. So when you do some exercise, you do get this kind of feel good factor. So yes, it was a distraction in one sense, but also it was helpful in another.
Thank you, Brother David. We'll have to stop right here because of the shortage of time. We'll see you again in our next episode. Thank you for being here.
Great, thanks, Pooja. I look forward to our next conversation.